Good evening, Learn Live UAE viewers. It's a pleasure to have you back again this evening. If you are new to the show, please don't forget to hit subscribe. I think it's down in this corner, just down there. But before we invite our guests on, we usually have a little bit of a back and forth. Mark, how you doing? You all right, mate? What have you been up to this week?
Well, not that much. Say Monday is my first day of the week being here in the UK, but a busy day today, and doing dev work on some new updates to Classroom.Cloud as part of my work at Net Supports. But after the show today, I'm really excited to be catching up with an old friend of mine, Monica Burns, who's Class Tech Tips on Twitter. Yes. So I'm interviewing her for my Tip Top Tips Edu podcast and vlog that I do. And so I'm really excited to have a good old catch up with her. Post this show, and that'll be live on the site and shared on Anchor and all these different places. Post that. So that's myself. How about yourself? How's your day and week been going so far, Ollie?
So far, so good. Yeah, we're second last week before Easter holidays, so it's pretty full on. Reports are open. We've had extended essay deadlines, due uploads, IA uploads. We had mock exams for 11s and 13s, so it's been all go at school. But there's light at the end of the tunnel because we've got one more week after this week, and then it's much deserved break. Also got two little presentations this week. One for Century. It's an ambassadors event. I'm doing a sort of 10 to 15 minute keynote and then roundtable discussion with them about how we've used Century at the British International School of Abu Dhabi. And that's going to go out, I believe, to lots of UK schools. Obviously, they're kind of where we were a good few months ago now. And also presenting at Edu Forum on how we've approached online teaching and learning over the last year in the Middle East. So, full-on week. I think
that's pretty interesting. I was writing a little article today, actually, Ollie, a curation of research and things. I was really pleased to. I mean, I've included an article of yours in the curation, but I was really pleased to see an article of yours, another one, which had been highlighted by Kat Scott. I hadn't realised it was on the Chartered College of Teaching site, so that was really lovely to see. I didn't even knew that, but. So, well, congratulations, Ollie. Everyone, hello to all of our viewers. Please do let us know how your week is going, how things are going for you in school. We're really excited to have two team members from JESS Dubai joining us on the show this evening. We've got Katie Raybold and Nellie Gamble joining us, and they're going to be sharing about how they use student data to inform wisdom for timely learning interventions at the school. So really pleased to welcome Nellie and Katie onto the show this evening. And so with that in mind, probably about time we brought them onto the show and say hello. So welcome first of all then to Nellie. Hiya, Nellie.
Hello. Hi, Mark.
Welcome.
Hi, Ollie.
Hi, Nellie.
And welcome to Katie as well. Welcome, Katie.
Hello, Mark. Hi, Ollie.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for joining us both.
So how are you both? How are you getting on? How are things in Dubai at the moment at the school?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to I was just discussing with Ollie actually before we came on. It's getting to the end of a short term, but it's definitely one that we're working towards that break now, because it's still working within the same restrictions that we have been since September. And whilst it was a novelty to begin with, to be working within slightly more restricted conditions and everybody being in school, I think it's a time when people are having to dig deep a little bit and draw on their resilience. But we can't complain though. Everybody's in school, and that's the main thing. So
I can't believe how much things have changed in the last sort of 12 months. It was just at the tail end of February last year where I was over at the school for the Digital Innovation Summit. And I remember sitting down and talking, and I was talking with various colleagues about, what's going to happen if this becomes a big thing with COVID. And then, I mean, just look at where we are now. Who'd have thought we'd have got to where we are now with all of this? How's that impacted on your role in school, Nelly?
I think we're just, as Katie said, we're full on, we're adjusting. I think it has a massive impact, as like my role is directly linked to digital learning and IT. So it's fair to say everything has changed. I've been fortunate enough to be working at JESS, so we were ready, or maybe more ready than ready more than other schools, and we could just, we were able to do the transition more easily, but it's still a learning curve. We're learning new things every day, adjusting as we go, getting into the new normal way of working and getting used to it.
No, absolutely. Ollie, over to you.
If you do have any questions tonight or comments, please do throw them into the chat, whether you're on Periscope or YouTube, or even on Twitter, and we can pose them to Nelly and Katie. It's always good to have a bit of a lively discussion. So please do fire any questions you might have in, or experiences that you've had. I know that work that you've done, Nelly and Katie, at JESS involves Power BI, which I think is a massively useful tool. We're kind of on that journey ourselves, but a couple of years behind yourselves at JESS. So really excited to learn from you. I think, Mark, we should just delve straight into Nelly and Katie's presentation. So
yeah, absolutely.
Should we bring their slides up without further ado?
Okay, perfect. So I will start. I guess I'll just go into more of the technical, how we reach the point that we're at right now, and the dashboards that we have and how they were developed. And then I'll hand over to Katie to talk about how, from a teacher point of view, how she has used it to make data-driven decisions and timely interventions. Okay. So over here, this is what I like to call just the big picture data model. So how we, the technicalities of how we reach the point that we're at. So digital governance. So it started off with our digital governance strategy and e-safety policies. So that's the main thing, the main driver of having a successful data model or data analytics model. So identify where data can be stored. So it has all the rules and guidelines around critical data sources. We labeled the data that we can share with teachers so that they know if it can be shared out of JESS or only within JESS, and that's for the whole school community to understand. We have our e-safety policy, which includes our data protection policies and how we protect the information that we are sharing with staff, parents, and students. And then we went in a step further, and we have put all the rules. So why are we actually keeping data, and what do we want to get out of it? So data must improve student outcome, must raise accountability, reduce teacher workload. So we didn't want to keep multiple copies of data. We didn't want to ask teachers to add it in multiple sources. We went through and had a centralized data source. This was a key element of the whole project. So we used we used our MIS, which is ISAMS. We use ISAMS at JESS as a centralized data source, and we kept looked at it as a point, a pivotal point to where every piece of information that we have on a student must be stored in ISAMS. That would limit duplication. And then when that was done, which took us, I would say, about 2 years, and just putting all the rules in place and looking at the different data inputs that we have, and then took us to choosing the technology that we're using. So ISAMS as our MIS, and then we wanted specifically ISAMS. We wanted to be able to get a live feed of data out of ISAMS and into a platform that we can use to visually show this data to teachers and students and parents. So we use Microsoft Power BI, which enabled us to connect directly to ISAMS, and it has a visual, which you will see in a minute. It's an easy visual for teachers to see in a platform with lots of visualizations. And then looking at the process itself, so we had input from the whole school community. So Katie will probably talk about that more than me, but we had input from teachers. We had students help us build the dashboards and get them to where they are right now. So I have this as an example of the process. So this is a big shout out to Luke Rees. So this was actually done by him, hand-drawn. This is his vision of how he wanted the dashboard to look for his school. And then this is side by side, this is how it looks right now. It's a profile for students where we can see all the information about the student in one dashboard. So I guess for today, we will look at a student data journey. So this student, Malak, she is a year 9 JESS student. She's in Katie's year group, which happens also to be my daughter. So she gave me permission to share her data today. And we will look at Malak and how her data helped teachers form a better picture about how she's performing. I have a few examples of the data that we keep. So student voice, past survey, student reflection, data that we collect from apps. We have teacher assessment. We have the medical information, attendance, behavior, and baseline data. So this is one example of an academic profile. So this is a dashboard that we have shared with all secondary teachers. So it looks at students from year 7 all the way to year 9. The good thing about Microsoft Power BI is that all the visuals are linked. So the data comes straight from iSAMS. It refreshes once every day. Teachers use their Microsoft Office 365 login to be able to access the data, so it's secure. It's linked to their Microsoft account. And then all the visuals are synced. So if I click on Malak's name, it's highlighted in red. And I can see on the side that it brings up all her subjects, all her reports for the whole year. And I can filter and drill down so I can see a whole form. I can see the students, this is specific to JESS, but I can see the students categorized, or the categories of how we measure the academic progress that they're doing. And then it's highlighted and color coded in a way that make it easier for teachers to understand and drill in. Power BI also has a drill-in feature. So if I want to look in more depth in a specific subject, I can just click in one button. So I can either see Malak's performance across all subjects, or see a specific subjects and all the students underneath. So if you click on Malak's name, it will bring up her record. Or if you click on a different year group, for example, all the filters are linked. And this is just a snapshot of the predictive analytics. So it's something that we're experimenting here at JESS. So we call it a what-if analysis. So teachers wanted, or based on their voice and what they told us that they wanted to see, they wanted adjustable grade boundaries. So for every department or every subject, the boundaries might be different. So for example, if you're looking at specific skills within a subject, and I want to see my top 10%, my bottom, say 20%, for example, or students that are achieving above a specific grades. So these slicers in the middle of the visual, the green, golden, and silver ones, teachers can just easily slide them left and right to change the boundaries to see how this affects the whole big data picture of all the students, and it can be filtered down by specific subject as well. And this brought a depth into the data and a teacher voice. They felt that they were having their own input instead of the data being static, and they made better decisions because of that. This is another view of the same report. So the bringing in the element of the written reports to the whole picture. So over here we can see I've hidden the student names, but all the students that are in year 9, you can see that it highlights. So I have one student, for example, that might be underachieving. So they have the red 4s. So if a teacher clicks on their name, they can bring up all the comments and see if it aligns with the academic progress that the teachers are thinking. So for example, they're lacking in critical thinking skills, or they need to work on their critical thinking skills. So I can click on their name and find out specifically what elements of the subject that they can work on out of the written elements of the report. So it brings in the reports, brings in the student reflection as well, what the students said about themselves in the reports, how they reflected on the grades that the teachers have awarded them. And it also brings in the whole school analysis. So we've been looking at a specific, or maybe a year group or a form group data. It can even map out like a whole school. So if I want to look at Arabic across every year group that I have, so I can see how the subject is doing, the percentages of Arabic against every other subject. I can see over here at the bottom, we have the skills that we have, and we have a JESS. We have aligned our reports so that we have, we call them non-negotiables that go on reports. So for example, self-management would go on every student report, so that I can, at the end of this journey, through year 9, for example, I can see how self-management was doing across all subjects, across every report that went out, reflection, knowledge and understanding. And over here I can see the visual gives me an idea of the specific skills that JESS might need to work on. So for example, over here I can see knowledge and understanding. I can see that reflection might need a little bit more work, as opposed to collaboration, for example. So students are more collaborative than they are with reflection. So it gives a nice snapshot just when you look at it for the skills that as a school we might need to work on, or the skills that we think are doing really well. And this is the whole school profile as well, and this is for the CAT 4. So it's another view where, again, teachers can just easily filter by gender, by nationality. We have added into ISAMs all of our historic data, so all of our baselines, so CAT 4, PTs, things that are required of us to analyze in the UAE. And then this was an easy way for teachers, side by side with the academic reports and how students are achieving academically. They can see how students are reaching their potential when it comes to CAT 4 profiles, for example, and if there's a dip, or if there's or if they're doing better from one test to the next. They can see if there's a verbal deficit, quantitative deficit. And over here, this is the visual at the bottom is showing numbers, but that for us that's just for the sake of the demo. This will be our student names. Teachers can see if they have a high verbal bias or a spatial bias, and so on. And I will hand over to Katie now.
Thank you, Nelly. So hi, everybody. I'm Katie Raybold. I'm currently head of year 9 at JESS. Really, my part of this presentation is bringing it to life for the teacher and for the student. So I'll be just talking through how we use the student profiles and the dashboard information as a day-to-day tool. There's two aspects that I'll be going through. One is from the teacher view, which I think you can currently see on the screen at the moment. And the other is actually what the students see and their own personal live student dashboard, which is personal to themselves. No other students can access that information, but they use it as a workable tool within the pastoral curriculum. So I'll talk through how we use the data profiles as a year 9 team specifically. And we have launched that new live dashboard this year. So we are very much the guinea pig year group for this. We've been asking for student voice and feedback on how workable the platform is, how usable it is, how much the students kind of value having their own data at their fingertips as well. So it's been a really useful kind of learning curve for the school, and also for Nelly and her team to be able to make ongoing adjustments to meet their needs as well. So the first one that we're looking at here is a teacher view of the student profiles. So this pretty much gives a complete story of each individual student. It's the one-stop shop for all the stakeholders, really, for the teachers, for students, for parents, to have a really clear, quick snapshot of different elements of data. There's no searching for documents of past data, of going into your mark books to have a look for report data, for current on track for grades. It's all there in one place, which I find incredibly convenient. And as in education, I think we often look at data quite heavily from an academic perspective. So what the dashboard has done is brought together the pastoral data and the academic data all on one platform. Particularly in my role as a head of year, it's a really, really useful tool for problem solving. It's part of the job, you know, identifying students' needs, looking at the patterns, does one thing impact the other thing? And we can make really clear links between the two. For example, there's some past data at the bottom left-hand corner there. And that might end up being an indicator for an impact on their academic or behaviour for learning competencies, which is what we assess against on the right-hand side at the bottom. So it just gives the links between the story, and it enables us to have those conversations with students, potentially with the other agents within the school, so different support systems. If we notice that there's potentially a link between attitude to learning or really low self-worth with the students, and we've noticed a drop in that data, and then right next to it we've got the fact that actually their current grades have slipped, or their engagement in their lessons has gone down as well. So it's all driven by the information on the dashboard. And if we head on to the next slide. So another layer to our teacher view is the attendance. So we've got this built in, it's all on the same dashboard, but just accessible on a different tab. And it just adds a piece to that bigger data puzzle. So it allows us to drill in as pastoral leaders and as form tutors to tutor group data, to potentially individual student data, and to whole school data in terms of attendance figures. Now, I find this really useful if I need to give a clear picture potentially to a parent and have a parent conversation of a student who hasn't been attending as well as we would like, or we've seen a bit of a difference in that, because this might be an indicator that there's something more going on. So it really does add to the bigger picture of what's going on for each student, and maybe open up some conversations there. It can also be used for accountability in terms of the leadership team. So you can see at the top, I think it's displaying our unregistered groups. So this might just be a late register. It's really, really quick. It's all pulled from ISAMS. So we can see clearly that certain subjects or different lessons have had a late register, which, you know, it's not to pull those people up, but it's actually on a safeguarding aspect as well. That's really useful. So I realise that all schools do have this data in their MIS. For us, it's ISAMS. But what I find really useful is it's just all in one place, and everything's a click away, really. So the next aspect of the teacher view is the pastoral dashboard. And this is pretty much the behaviour for learning in a nutshell. It's really, really visual. You can see as a year 9 team, I think this one is specifically, is highlighting the ratio of positive points to negative points for a particular tutor group. It enables us to have a really clear image of across subject areas. So are there subject areas that our students are really excelling in, or are there subject areas where they need a bit more support in? But what I really like about this for my team of 12 in year 9 is this information, again, has always been stored somewhere on ISAMS. It's always been in the background, and you have to maybe have about 5 different routes in at times. But we want teachers to use this data. We want them to have it at their fingertips so that they can have conversations with their tutees, so that they can sit down and have one-to-one conversations in mentor time, which is something that we actively do at JESS, to look at not only the kind of causes for concern, but to really highlight the positives. And off the back of looking at this data as a tutor, they might send out postcards home and give that recognition that's needed. So it's a driver of conversation. It's transparent, so everyone can see it nice and clearly. I think if we look at the storytelling, sorry, Nelly, just before we head on to the student voice section, the pastoral data is often the side that brings a lot of things to light first. So just to kind of pull in all of those different aspects of the dashboard, it might be that, you know, a student is suddenly picking up a large number of behaviour points for organisation. They've also had a sporadic attendance, and their past data, their most recent past data, is indicating maybe a low attitude to learning or generally low work ethic. And a picture is painted all in one place. It's really, really quick and easy to see. And for some students, that can indicate maybe a parent being overseas or having that kind of pastoral hold on each student in the year group. So it was all in ISAMS, but it would have taken me probably about 3 to 4 different places to find all of that. If I just quickly move on to the student view. So this is how the students view their own personal dashboard. You can see at the top in the red rectangle, that is where they can access it via their e-planner on Teams. So it's right at the forefront of what they're using every day. The e-planner is where they keep all of their key information. It's how I communicate to the year group with any notices or assemblies and things like that. So what the tutors will have been doing over the last few months is asking students to look at their dashboard. This is their academic tab, so it gives them an ongoing tracking of each report cycle, and it's enabled our students to see for themselves the progress that they're making from one report cycle to the next. So they can flick between the 2 report cycles, and by the changing colour, it might show more light green, which obviously is really motivational for them because they see that they're making some improvements. If it suddenly shows up some red areas, they know that there's areas that need to be worked on. So it isn't all one way in terms of teachers kind of giving that information to the students. They've got it and they actively use it and interact with it. So it's also combined with, I think, especially for year 9 this year, they've just done their options. And we had one of the power apps added on to their team, and that was to decide on their options and put their options form in. So I know when I was looking at the different tutor groups, they were flicking between their academic data and their GCSE options form, which is brilliant because we've got students then that are really understanding their strengths and areas for development that might even influence their choice of what they go on to study, because they know the things that they're really good at. So it really drives reflection, gives them ownership of their own learning, and it's something that we do a lot of goal setting around as well. So another aspect that the students can see, if we head on to the next one, Nelly, this is their pastoral tab. So it has everything relating to their day-to-day kind of stuff. So we've got the timetable embedded on there, which the students found really useful. Gone are the days of colouring in timetables and sticking it in a planner that then gets lost on week 3 of term. It's all there, so they don't need to get lost. And if room changes happen, they sync with ISAMS. So really useful tool. We've got a really clear visual of their own personal reward and conduct, and that's shown across all of the different subjects that they do. So again, this is a very good student, so we don't see too much kind of areas for concern other than potentially not returning a library book, which has obviously come up with a couple of negative points for Malak. But yeah, it gives them a real kind of visual of which areas they are exceeding in and performing really well, and the areas that they're maybe not quite as organised or engaged. And some students have found this really motivational because they can see the bars going up and they can see the colours changing in terms of more blue, potentially for somebody who's really working on trying to limit some of the kind of negative behaviour points. And if anything, it's so transparent that it makes it more real. Before, students would have to come and ask their tutor or come and speak to me to see how many behaviour points they've got or how many house points I got, so that I know how many I need to reach our bands of gold, silver and bronze. So it does make it more real, which makes them more accountable, I think, personally. And just finally, to finish our presentation, from the student side, what's been really, really nice to embed in our student dashboard this year. If we head on to the next one, Nelly, there we go. So this is their full report tab. So it's the report that went out just before the winter break for year 9. And what we included in that was a student reflection. So we've got the qualitative data in there from their teacher comments, but also their own student reflection as well. It allowed them to have their say on their report, but also draw upon that in mental times to see if they've actually actioned any of their targets that they wanted to see if they've made any improvements, and have those conversations with their tutors. So I think initially they needed to have the familiarization with the different report batteries, which is something that at JESS we've spent quite a lot of time on with our students to understand the assessment criteria. And I put on there assessment literacy. It's something that I think underpins all of that. And a term used by Carol Evans, who has done an awful lot of work on assessment for learning. So it gives them the understanding of what is expected of them, what do they need to do to meet those expectations, and their ability to basically show how they understand that subject. So I think this has been a really nice addition for them, and following each report we'll continue to do their own reflection, and this actually went to parents as well, so parents saw their reflection as well. So that's the dashboard in a nutshell. I'll hand back over to Nelly.
Thank you, Katie. I think I'll just take 3 minutes just talking about the Power BI. So for any school that is interested in building similar dashboards, I'll just give a brief overview of the tech. So Power BI is a Microsoft product. You can download it for free from the Microsoft website. You just download it, similar to how you have an Excel file, for example. And then how we do it at JESS is that we connect live to our ISAMS database. So if you are a school that do use ISAMS, just get in touch with them. They can give you the specific information that you need to connect to ISAMS, the data source. You can still connect as part of a trial. If you want to try Power BI before you roll it out in your school, you can still connect to an Excel spreadsheet. It works in the exact same way. I would highly recommend connecting to a database. It just makes sure that your data is always live and current and up to date, and the teachers don't have to add the data in 2 different places. So contact ISAMS if you're an ISAM school or any other MIS provider, and just get the information of how to connect directly to a database. And then once that's done, if you're happy with your dashboards, the Power BI desktop, so the one you download for free off the Microsoft website, has all the functionalities that you need. There's nothing that is missing, so you don't have to buy anything, no licenses to get it to work. But once you get to the sharing side of things, so if you want to share your dashboards with the community, that's when you would need to look at purchasing a license for Power BI. So either Power BI Premium, which covers, it gives you unlimited users. So if you're planning on sharing dashboards with parents, as we do at JESS, and students, and then I suggest a Power BI Premium license. Otherwise, Power BI Pro, which is a license that you would need to purchase for staff members that you think you want to share the dashboards with. And this is it for our presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Nelly, and thank you to Katie, and a massive thank you as well, Nelly, to Malak for allowing us to look at her data. And that's actually really brave, to allow us to do this and share it on YouTube. So thank you very much to Malak for that. That's very, very kind of her to allow us to do that. And thank you both for your really interesting presentation. Ollie, we've got some really lovely comments in the chat, haven't we? Your microphone's off, Ollie.
There we go. Bingo, round 1. We've had "This is amazing, I want it at my school" from Miss Nicola Ann, and it really is amazing. I think that's fantastic. The aggregated marginal gains that Mark always talks about, you're doing that for teachers. From Jane, we've had another comment: "Student dashboards look really useful. love the ease of access for all stakeholders, and that really resonates. I think that it should be easy to use for all stakeholders. Mark, over to you.
I completely agree. One of the things that Morgan mentioned when she was sharing last week was how she wants data to be sort of wrapped up in as a lovely present with a big bow on top, so that when you're there as a teacher, you've got all the information you need right there. And clearly, the time and effort you've put into creating this system means that you've got that there ready and in place for all of you. One of the things you mentioned at the beginning, Nelly, was the importance of choosing the right sort of infrastructure. One of the things you mentioned was having the MIS. Now, obviously, I know you use ISAMS, but other MIS providers are available. If a school's looking to try and replicate this sort of thing, obviously this sort of thing is possible through ISAMS, but what sorts of features should schools and teachers and school leaders be looking for to facilitate these kind of things happening and enable them to do this in their schools as well?
I think, the basis is, I think, and what Katie mentioned as well, is the data model. So we've looked at all of our reports, looked at the criteria that we have, and I think when you get this right, the database that you choose to store it into will most probably allow a direct link. I think I'm not 100% sure of every MIS platform that is out there, but most of them, every MIS platform is built on a database, and a database would allow access, and Power BI would connect to any data source that does allow it. I know that this is a big topic in schools, and I'm sure MIS providers would be more than happy to work with schools to get something like this in place if schools are happy to put in the time and effort. So the tech is available, it's online. There's documentation about how to, on the Microsoft website, about how to connect to a database. So MIS or other than that, I think we even have third-party providers. So like Classroom Monitor, for example, who agreed to give us a live feed from their database. So it is possible if you talk to the MIS provider, and it should be easy to implement. But it all comes down to how you shape your data. That's the biggest thing that I always emphasize. It has to be, you have to sit down as a school, so get a big board or a whiteboard, a big piece of paper, and just map and look at one report, for example, and say, as a school, I'm trying to look at critical thinking. Is it on my report? Do students know what critical thinking is? Do parents know? And then how do I know how critical thinking is doing across JESS? So to know that, I need to have it consistent across departments, or any skill that you want to analyze has to be stored in a way that allows any database to feed it into Power BI in a way that you can make a meaningful decision out of it.
Thank you very much, Nelly. What I like about that really is that you've taken the time to do the groundwork beforehand. It's so easy to dive straight into these sort of things, and then once the horse is bolted and you realize you needed to do other things and line up a few other dots before you actually started it. Spending that time, like I say, getting the whiteboard, getting some paper out, going old school, taking those sketches like Luke did for the dashboards. Doing that groundwork is so important, isn't it? Thank you very much for sharing that, Nelly. Thank you. Ollie, have you got another question?
Yeah, just wanted to back that up as well with, I think it's really important. Something that I'm hugely impressed by with this is part of that groundwork as well is making it a common language of learning across your institution, so that every teacher, every stakeholder understands your common threads. A question that I'm sure is on many viewers' minds is this one from Philippa Wraithmouth. How frequently do you get staff to enter data to give you an accurate picture of the school at any moment in time? And does each subject have a range?
That's a very good question. And I think that the best thing about this project is that we actually haven't asked teacher to enter any data, any more data than they are actually used to. So they only enter the reporting information, which we adjust depending on the year group, but the average is, it's always been the case. The average is 5 reports go home every year. The things that we had to change, but teachers don't enter this data, is adding all of our external baseline assessment data into ISAMS, We've moved admissions, we've moved the health office. So just to get in the big picture, so health office are adding everything about the, to say the medical facts for the students into ISAMs. They were inputting the information anyway. We have information coming in from the at the time of admissions. So permissions, for example, attendance teachers are doing anyway before. So we haven't really asked teachers, and that was the key part of why we took on this project. So to save teachers' time and reduce their workload. So they're doing the same reports that they've always been doing. We had 2 years, Katie, I think 2 years before, we had a change to how we went to a centralized markbooks. So we moved to ISAM's markbooks, where we have all the reporting information as well as the day-to-day markbook information that teachers would add into ISAMs, but they don't go out in a report. So this was a project done 2 years ago. It did help. So we have another dashboard looking at the information that teachers add for the students, but they don't go out to parents. I guess we did not ask teachers to add any more information, but we just made sure that the rules around where the information can go. So we went through a whole audit of if teachers are keeping Excel files with essential information about students in their OneDrive, and once they leave JESS, this data is gone forever. So the rules around where the data is stored, and then shaping ISAMs and Power BI to just help teachers add the information just once, because they do that anyway.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Nelly. I've got a related question, if that's okay. And whether yourself, Nelly, or you, Katie, want to answer that is entirely up to you. But in my experience, I work a lot with teachers, as you know, and one of the biggest issues I come across with teachers around using technology for teaching and learning is their confidence and their competence in knowing how to do these different things and making it, the use of technology purposeful. I'll always remember somebody I worked with once who said that I don't do Excel. And they had, genuine fear of using data, and this was the head of department. So when you've got people like this in your school, what did JESS do to try and support teachers so they can make the best use of these insights that the platform is delivering? How do you sort of work with your colleagues so that they can make the most of it?
I think mostly is that it was built by teachers. So similar to what you've seen, the hand drawing with Luke, the Year 9 dashboards for students was built by Katie, by students sometimes themselves. So Malak did help a lot in building her own dashboards. She gave me input and insight and what worked and what didn't. So the key here is just knowing your audience. You're doing it for them. So they are the main users. Power BI, the good thing about it is that you can't really break it. So I always tell them, like, if you keep clicking and drilling and you find that you just can't make sense of the data anymore, just refresh the whole page. It's not like Excel where you can just one comma in a formula bar breaks the whole formula, and then you want to go back to a version and you can't find it, and so you go back to the data source. So the good thing about it is that you can't really break it, and the way that it worked for them is that it was actually built by them, not by anyone else. So built for students, then we get input for students. If it's built for teachers or Katie, for example, then Katie has the input. It was for them. I had many cases where so teachers, I start with I make a best guess, then I always call it. So what I think teachers would like to see. And then they come back and say, okay, but I need to know, I need to bring the gender information in, or the date of birth. This is relevant in this case where I want to see if the age of the student makes a difference in how they're performing in a specific area, for example. So it's having a constant feedback loop from teachers. And I think it's one of the teachers, even the ones that say, I don't do Excel, want to do data, but they just don't want to do the Excel part of it. So as soon as you give them that you want to work with them to build it, they will put in the time and effort to actually tell you what they need.
Mm-hmm. I think just to jump in, it's one of the things that I mentioned is the user friendliness. So Nelly touched upon the fact that you cannot break it. So it was just a case of spending time actually navigating around the dashboard, CPD in terms of from a head of year to tutors, allowing them to spend time to just navigate around and ask the questions and delve into each layer. It's quite a layered system. So as Nelly said, if you get too far in the layers and you think, I don't quite know what this is telling me anymore, then just refresh and go again and ask those questions. So it is something that has been rolled out, I'd say quite gradually, but at the same time, as soon as Power BI was launched for teachers, it was really actively taken up, because I think teachers were just so glad to have something all in one place that is efficient. So they wanted to know how it worked. I know personally that's how I felt.
Brilliant. Thanks, Katie. I know you've got a question as well, Ollie, from the audience as well. Yeah,
this is quite a topical one, but it's relevant again, you know, another year after. The cancelling of board exams has led to, obviously, teachers across the globe gathering all sorts of evidence on student performance. In your experience, what evidence would you suggest that teachers and schools gather to give a fair predicted grade?
I think for this one, it's, you know, for our school in particular, we have put in timely kind of mock examinations. So for example, we would only normally do one mock before the final exam. We've actually just completed our second mock, just to give another layer of that kind of evidence that you can draw upon. And should exams be cancelled for certain exam boards, we're going to be doing our own constructed final kind of assessment, which is another kind of mock assessment, but it will be an end of year assessment. So you've got essentially 3 full criteria assessments completed. And I know an awful lot of work, just drawing on last year for subject heads of department, there was an awful lot of work that went into working with templates that would work out their kind of work back with their department on getting a really good picture of what their overall grade would be based on interim tests, end of topic tests, chapter tests, to come up with what would be a really kind of fair prediction for them. I don't know if Nelly can add much to that, but that's how it's looking for us at the moment. Just more kind of full test criteria to draw upon. And if you've got the data and it's all there, and you've got those kind of report interims or the live mark books that are reflecting where the student is currently, which is what Nelly was mentioning in terms of that live mark book is updating all the time. It's basically what we had in a book where we were writing our even, you know, small tests within the lesson that weren't an end of topic test. It's all there, so then you can add your formulas in and work out what would be a fair estimation for them.
I think
with oh, sorry, Nelly, you go.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to add maybe on the assessment side of things. So it's just an idea, maybe a little bit forward thinking, but I mean, we're not doing it. I mean, as Katie said, we're going with the mock and the assessments that we use in JESS. But I think what I wanted as a second step or something to do later is add the machine learning aspect on top of the data analytics. So instead of having assessments or exams for students, so when we have big data, when we have historic data, so right now we're keeping, students can see information from when they join JESS, every piece of information that we have for them. We can add machine learning on top of that and have the machine predict what the final grade should be for the student. And this could be the future of how we do assessments. It's just an idea, something that I'm working on as a machine learning model, but hopefully we can get some sort of hybrid environment where the machine can predict the exams for students. Who knows?
Yeah, that's fantastic, Nelly. And that sort of leads really, really nicely, without any planning at all, a segue into a question I wanted to ask, because clearly there's lots and lots of automation going on to bring through these dashboards and what have you. But I was wondering if there was anything in the system at the moment which sort of raises alerts or notifications if you know, that let's say there's something which happens in one subject, or a student, let's say Malak is starting to underperform, or a few sort of key trends are starting to appear. Is there currently any automation within the system which sort of flags that as an alert, rather than you having to actually sort of drill down into these sort of things yourself as a teacher or head of year or head of faculty?
We haven't yet, so the system does not auto alert. We have started embedding the dashboards into different pages, so within SharePoint or Microsoft Teams, and open up the chat or the comments function. So every dashboard will have a comments function. We try to do the alerts in a color coded. Sometimes we code so we have the top ranked students or bottom ranked who are underperforming and so on. So we do have specific dashboards that look specifically at certain skills. We try as much as possible, you know, with data. We can look at data bias and how, you know, from a perspective of someone modeling data, you can give, you can't help but put your own perception or perception of the data when you're giving it to teachers. No, I mean, we're still having it as an open conversation with staff, with comments. Haven't yet done the automated alerts to staff, but hopefully that's something that we can work on. Yeah.
It goes to it. So another question that I had lined up for you, which was sort of the what's next for what you're trying to achieve here, but sort of wrapping it all up in what you said before about sort of when you've got the big data and tying it into machine learning and what that sort of the benefits that can bring. What's lovely from where I'm sitting is how much further ahead you are to many schools. So, you know, many schools would be right back where you were 2 years ago. You're now in a position where you've got a lot of things all set up as you need them to be, so you're now ready to move into that sort of next step and develop that. It's really interesting to learn about and hear from. Thank you both, Nelly and Katie. Ollie, I know you've got another question for them both though, so I'll pass over to you.
We've got a live one, but I wanted to ask from a sort of parent and cultural perspective. Of course, historically in education, parents are used to waiting for either, you know, an email to hit their inbox, or you know, probably back in all of our days, a letter to go home or something for them to actually get a clear picture of where their son or daughter or children are at that point of learning. How have they responded, and how have you approached this complete transformation of data to parents to get live in the moment feedback on their child or children?
I think from my perspective, we've had some really positive feedback. It's the student live dashboard is only accessible by the student, so the parents can't just tap into that whenever they want. But what it does build is that relationship at home, parents sitting down with the students and actually having those conversations as an ongoing thing, as opposed to, okay, it's parent-teacher conference, let's talk about it. It's something that's an ongoing dialogue. So I also think because it is so comprehensive in what it tells them, and the real key here is the students' understanding in terms of how we've rolled it out. I was really conscious of making sure that the students have a full understanding of what each of those aspects of the data is showing them. Because one, it will make them engage with it more, but it also means that it has more meaning to them and they can explain it to their parents. So it kind of it's a win-win, because we don't have to, you know, give an awful lot of education to the parents, because luckily the students can do that. We have shared information with parents though, and you know, there's been a few presentations to parents on how it's going to look, and how we will be using these live mark books, and I think it's been pretty positive on the whole.
That's great. I mean, one of these sort of standout presentations I remember seeing in one of the innovation summits at JESS was Trish Coffey, when she was talking about metacognition and the importance of having the sort of conversations about learning and students, you know, being really understanding of how they learn and approaches to learning, and them having access to this data as well. It's just part of that bigger conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
And clearly, you know, it's something that is for me a real sort of highlight of how you all approach the way in which you work with the children at the school. It's fantastic to see. We've got a question from the audience again. Many students have become disengaged since school closures. Is it possible to use the data sets that you have to see if there's any correlation with the student to engage with it and their progress and their attendance, etc.? That's from Rebecca Dickinson. Would you like to have a go at answering that one, Katie, or would you rather go, Nelly?
I can have a go. Well, I think for making those connections and links, it has been a useful tool. For example, that straight away you can see on your attendance part of the dashboard individual students that have suddenly had a drop in attendance. You know, it's been a really hard thing to manage. I was talking to Ollie before we went live of having students at home, having students in a different classroom, having students in front of you. They're off for all different reasons, whether it's, you know, quarantine or whatever. And so it could possibly be easy to let students slip through the gaps if you haven't got that data at your hands and to be able to see that. So I think, again, it's the way that it's used by the pastoral team. So, for example, every Sunday morning, my tutors are allocated a mentor time while the students silent read and get themselves sorted for the week. They check the data. They have a look if there's any students that have picked up more level ones than normal, which is our behaviour points. They look to see if their general tutor group attendance has dropped. And it has highlighted quite a few issues. For one tutor group in particular, their numbers just kept dropping off, and it was that culture of a few students in the group were feeling anxious to come to school. So then that spread to their friends, and then some more friends, and it created kind of almost quite a fearful culture of coming into school because of what was happening in that one particular bubble of their tutor group. So it gave us the opportunity really to have conversations with that individual group, to send information to parents, and just kind of work with them on a bit more of a personal note from that. So yeah, I think it has indicated a link between those that are struggling, particularly in changes of behaviour. You can even in the system look at the last 2 weeks. You can look at the last 1 month, 3 months, or the whole academic year in terms of how their behaviour and attitude to learning has changed. If it's pretty stable, you don't ask many questions, but if there are peaks and troughs, then you can start identifying some things there.
That's a great response. Thank you very much for that, Katie. And thank you to Rebecca for the question. Thank you. Ollie, over to you.
I'm really mindful of time, Mark. We've only got about 3 minutes, but I guess I'll sort of make a bit of a statement that it's really important, and all students, regardless of background or anything, deserve a great education and, to become not only knowledgeable but successful adults that contribute to the wider world. And I think the work that you're doing is clearly highlighting the right data at the right time that serves your community. And it's been a pleasure to actually just sit and learn and listen from you both. I'll just sort of echo something that Mark said at the start. Please do reach out to Nelly, Katie, or the team at JESS. We've had a banner going along. You can follow Jess at Jess Dubai. Nelly Gamel is at Nelly Gamel. And Katie's going to restart her Twitter profile soon. Yeah. So we'll post that when it's out there. But just a massive thank you from both of us for giving up your time this evening to come on the show and share the great things that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
It's been an absolute pleasure, both of you. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you to our audience for joining us again. Don't forget, you can watch every episode of Learn Live UAE back on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/LearnLiveUAE. And if you'd rather, then we have our Anchor podcast, which you can listen to on Stitcher, Spotify, and of course, Apple Podcasts. I think that's about us done for this week. So I'm just going to do another little thank you to Nelly and Katie, and to everyone who's taken the time to come and join us live on the show this evening. But for now, it's myself and Ollie saying goodbye, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Learn Live UAE. Thank you again, Nelly. Thank you, Katie. And please say hi to everybody at JESS from us both. Thank you both very much. Thank you.
Thank you.